I think it is a sad day in Great Britain. Margaret Thatcher was a political leader who polarised opinion probably as no other British Prime Minister had done to date, or nor indeed has done since. I think, however, I would hope that the significance of her impact on the political scene, whether you agree with it or not, is what remains today, and I think that is the case.
So even those who did not favor her politics or policies would have regard and sadness for her today?
It's interesting looking at the British media this morning that there is a lot of sadness from one political point of view, and there is some rejoicing from another. But I think overall there is a general sense of profound recognition that today marks the end of an era, and that Thatcher, whatever you thought about her, and I was a big fan of Margaret Thatcher, whatever you did think about her, everyone knew that she bestrode the political scene like a colossus. First British female Prime Minister, changed the way that Britain is fundamentally.
You say the end of an era. Her politics will not come again in Great Britain?
We live in Great Britain. Britons live daily with the implications of what Margaret Thatcher did. Privatisation of utilities and industry, more of a focus on entrepreneurialism and the individual's ability and willingness to make their own way in life. Will we see another Prime Minister who can make such an impact in such a fashion? I don't know.
Now, she and Ronald Reagan are inextricably linked,
yes.
Both in terms of their timing on the political scene and in the politics that they brought to the world. Will you always mention the other when you mention one?
I think there's a sense that in the public mind, certainly, and certainly as far as the Cold War is concerned, they are linked indivisibly. And there is a belief, too, that there was a strong personal bond between these two great leaders during those years. I'm just going to add something. This year's visiting professor of British history, Fulbright professor, Jim Cooper, is an expert on the Thatcher-Reagan relationship and the economics of that. And he's on campus today if you wanted to get a few words from him, too.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
Okay.
Okay, so between the two of them, they define an era.
I think so.
Politics.
For many people looking back at the Cold War and the end of the Cold War, Thatcher and Reagan, whatever the realities of that relationship behind the scenes, publicly they seem very much in step, internationally and to a large extent domestically as well.
She comes here in 1996. Reagan has already been here. Gorbachev has already been here. She is part of a parade of Cold Warriors who come here at the end of the Cold War. What was the significance in your mind of her appearance here?
I think the significance of Margaret Thatcher coming here in 1996, commemorating, of course, what was then the 50th anniversary of Churchill's visit here in 1946. Tremendously significant. Margaret Thatcher, as we've said, a great Cold Warrior, and delivers a remarkably prescient speech entitled New Threats for Old, in which she talked about, while the Cold War is over and the certainties that underpin that conflict are done, in the future we may be faced with threats that are less predictable and for which we have less understanding. And in a sense, the war on terror and the subsequent events of post-September 11th, 2001, in a way have borne out what Margaret Thatcher was talking about substantially. She
was prescient in that regard.
Absolutely, yes.
Her legacy going forward?
Margaret Thatcher's legacy, I think, is to look back at a country that's very different to the country she took over in 1979. It is a country that is more confident, I believe. It is more economically viable than it once was. It is, in a sense, though, more divided than it once was. But Margaret Thatcher once talked about putting the great back into Great Britain, and I think she succeeded substantially in doing just that.
But as you say, she was a polarizing figure. Will she always be a polarizing figure?
It will be interesting to see how history deals with her legacy, because she's been out of power, essentially. She stepped down in November 1990. She's been gone 23 years. But with her alive, it was very difficult to take a judgment or make a judgment on her legacy. And I think with her gone, it'll enable a more sober, balanced. Let me say that again. I think with her removed completely from the scene, it will enable a more sober and balanced reflection of her achievements to be made.